What would you do if a poor little girl walked up to a homeless man and gave him her late father's only remaining boots? Boots filled with memories, love, and loss. Now imagine if that man wasn't homeless at all. A simple act of kindness turns into something no one saw coming. Lives are about to change forever, but not in the way you expect. If you're new to the channel, make sure to hit subscribe, tap like, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. The afternoon sun hung low over the rooftops of Portland, casting long, soft shadows across the sidewalks. 10-year-old Nora Hensley walked beside her mother, Clara, their hands gently linked. It was a quiet walk, the kind they took every Wednesday after visiting the small public library downtown. Nora's arms clutched a book she'd borrowed, one about tiny machines and how they helped people build things. She had always been curious, asking questions most kids her age didn't think to ask. Today, though, she wasn't asking about robots or inventions. She stopped suddenly. "Mom," she said, tugging Clara's sleeve. "He's still there." Clara followed her daughters, eyes to the bridge ahead. Just beneath it, sitting quietly against the concrete wall, was a man wrapped in layers of clothing. His coat was old, his shoes torn and falling apart. A small bag rested beside him. He wasn't holding a sign. He wasn't asking anyone for money. He just sat there, watching people walk past, unnoticed. "That's the third time this week," Nora whispered. Clara nodded. She recognized him too now. "Some people don't have a home to go to," she said softly. "Life can be unfair like that." "But it's getting colder," Nora said, frowning. "His shoes look worse today." Clara gently pulled her daughter forward. "We have to keep moving, honey. I still have to make dinner before work tonight." But Nora didn't move right away. She stood there for another second, staring at the man under the bridge. "Dad would have said we should help," she murmured. Clara's heart ached at the sound of that name, Luke. It had been a year since the accident at the auto shop. One faulty machine, one loud crash, and just like that, he was gone. Nora rarely talked about it anymore, but Clara could see the shadow it left behind. She squeezed Nora's hand. "Your dad did have a kind heart," she said gently. "Now let's get home before the pasta boils over again." They lived in a small apartment on the second floor of an old building. It had creaky floors and a tiny balcony that Nora liked to call the lookout tower. It wasn't much, but it was home. Clara headed to the kitchen to start dinner while Nora disappeared into her room. A few minutes later, Clara heard the sound of boxes opening and drawers sliding. "Nora?" she called. "What are you doing?" The little girl returned, holding something in her arms, a pair of brown work boots. The laces were neatly tied, and the leather, though worn, still looked strong. "Mom," Nora asked, standing in the doorway, "do you think these would fit that man?" Clara turned from the stove and froze. She hadn't seen those boots in months. They had belonged to Luke, his best boots, as he called them. He had kept them polished and clean, wearing them on weekends or when helping neighbors fix things. He hadn't been wearing them the day he died. Clara had packed them away in the back of Nora's closet, unable to part with them. "Nora," she said softly, "those boots are very special. They were your dad's." Nora nodded. "That's why I think we should give them. Dad always said the most special things should be shared." Clara knelt down, her eyes filling with tears. "Sweetheart, that man is a stranger. We don't know him." "But he looked so tired," Nora replied, "and his shoes are falling apart. These would keep his feet warm." She hugged the boots to her chest. "Please, Mom. It feels like what Dad would do." Clara looked at her daughter, really looked. There was something so familiar in her expression. A steady kindness, a gentle determination. Luke's spirit lived on in this little girl. "I'll think about it," she said, turning back to the stove before Nora could see the tears in her eyes. That night, after Nora had gone to bed, Clara sat in the living room holding a framed photo of Luke. In it, he was grinning, his arm wrapped around a younger Nora. Her curls were wild back then, her smile missing 2 front teeth. "What would you say right now?" Clara whispered to the photo. Would you want me to let her give them away? The answer somehow felt clear. The next morning, Clara found Nora in the kitchen, carefully wrapping the boots in newspaper like a gift. After school, Clara said softly, "We'll take them together." Nora's face lit up with joy. As they packed her lunch and zipped up her coat, Clara watched her daughter and thought, not for the first time, how some hearts are born knowing exactly what matters. But what Clara didn't know, what neither of them could know, was this: the man under the bridge wasn't who they thought he was, and giving away those boots was going to change their lives forever. The next afternoon, the sky above Portland was pale and gray, like it couldn't decide whether to rain or stay dry. Nora walked quickly beside her mother, clutching the wrapped boots tightly in both arms. Her backpack bounced on her shoulders, and her face was filled with a mix of nerves and excitement. "Are you sure you still want to do this?" Clara asked gently. "Yes," Nora replied without hesitation. "Dad would want us to." They reached the bridge. The man was there, sitting in the same spot under the concrete, legs crossed, head down, coat zipped high against the breeze. His shoes, Nora noticed again, were torn almost completely across the soles. Clara stopped a few feet away and gave Nora a little nod. "Go ahead, sweetie. I'm right here." Nora took a deep breath and walked toward him. "Excuse me, sir?" she said, her voice quiet but steady. The man looked up slowly. His eyes were a soft blue-gray, framed by wrinkles and tiredness. He looked at Nora for a long moment before answering, as if surprised anyone had spoken to him. "Yes?" "I saw you here," she said, "for 3 days now. I thought you might need these." She held out the package. Carefully, she unwrapped the newspaper and revealed the brown work boots, polished and neat despite their age. "These were my dad's," Nora explained. "He passed away last year, but his shoes are still strong, and I think they'll help keep your feet warm." The man stared at the boots, then at the girl, silent. Clara stepped closer, placing a hand on Nora's back. "They're a gift," she said gently. "We just wanted to help." The man blinked, his voice catching. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Nora smiled. "Just wear them. They're really good boots." He reached out with hands that trembled slightly, taking the boots with surprising care. "Thank you," he whispered. This is more than kind." Nora beamed. "You're welcome." They left soon after, but the moment stayed with him. He sat there for a long time, holding the boots in his lap, staring at them like they were made of gold. Because for Rowan Vale, they might as well have been. Rowan was not who he seemed. To the world, he was the wealthy and private founder of Valecore Systems, one of the biggest tech companies in the country. His name often appeared in business magazines, though rarely with photos. He preferred to stay in the background. But once a month, Rowan disappeared from the world of suits and meetings. He wore second-hand clothes, changed his hair slightly, and stepped into the streets. No bodyguards, no assistants, just a backpack and a week of walking among everyday people. He called them Truth Weeks. It was something his late wife, Ava, had once encouraged. "You can't lead people if you don't understand them," she used to say. "Go out there, be invisible, feel what it's like to be small." Since her death, those weeks had become more than just lessons. They were how he stayed human. But this was the first time anyone had really seen him. A child, a girl with wide eyes and a heart bigger than the city. She had watched him, noticed him, remembered him, and then given him something truly valuable. Not money, not food, but something filled with meaning. Her father's boots. Rowan couldn't stop thinking about it. That night, back in his high-rise apartment, he placed the boots gently on a table near a framed photo of Eva. She was smiling in the picture, standing under a tree in a summer dress, her arms full of books. She had been a school teacher. Her dream had always been to start a program for children who didn't have much, especially those with only one parent. Rowan had promised her he would do it. But after she died, the plan got lost in grief, in meetings, in silence. Now these boots had woken something up. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. "Jillian," he said, speaking to his longtime assistant. "I need you to find someone. A woman named Clara Hensley. She lives in Portland. I believe she's a grocery store worker. She has a daughter named Nora, 10 years old." There was a pause. "Is this a personal request, Mr. Vale?" "Yes," he replied. "It's very personal." He hung up and sat quietly, staring again at the boots. Something had changed. A piece of himself had returned. Across town, Clara tucked Nora into bed. The little girl smiled up at her mother, proud of what they had done. "Do you think he liked them?" she asked. "I think he loved them," Clara said softly. "Do you think Dad knows?" Clara nodded, brushing hair from Nora's forehead. "I think he's very proud of you." Outside, the wind picked up. Leaves danced in circles along the sidewalks. And under the bridge, a man no longer quite a stranger held onto a gift that reminded him of the promises he once made. Promises he now intended to keep. A week had passed since Nora gave away her father's boots. Life went on as usual, almost. Clara still woke up early, packed Nora's lunch, worked long hours at the grocery store, and returned home tired. Nora still did her homework at the kitchen table, helped with dinner, and read library books under a blanket in the evenings. But something had changed. They both felt it. One Thursday morning, just as Clara was tying her apron in the break room, her manager entered holding a clipboard. "Clara," he said, smiling. "Got a minute?" She nodded, a bit surprised. Her manager rarely smiled. "There's been talk from corporate. They're starting something new, an employee support program, and your name came up." "My name?" Clara blinked. "Why?" "You've been working hard. Long shifts. Always reliable. They've chosen you for a promotion. Assistant store manager." Clara's eyes widened. "That can't be right." "And that's not all," he continued, flipping the clipboard around. "They're also offering an education scholarship for children of employees. Your daughter Nora can apply for full tuition at a private school called Brookhill Academy." Clara's mouth went dry. Brookhill was known across the state. Only children from rich families went there. "Why me?" she whispered. The manager shrugged. "It came from someone higher up. Really high up." That evening, Clara told Nora during dinner. She kept her voice calm, though inside she was full of questions. "They said you can go to Brookhill if you want." Nora's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "Really? But that place, it's huge." Clara nodded. "I know. It's also far from here, but they'll provide transportation, books, even lunch." Nora stared down at her plate. "Why would they give that to us?" Clara didn't have an answer. Across town, inside a tall building made of glass and steel, Rowan Vale sat with a folder in front of him. Inside was everything about Clara Hensley, her work record, her rental history, Nora's school grades, and even a copy of Luke Hensley's obituary. He closed the folder gently. He didn't feel proud. He felt cautious. He knew helping people with money was a fine line. Some would say it was charity. Others might say it was control. He didn't want to control anyone. He wanted to repay a moment of real kindness. The next week, Clara received a formal invitation. A man named Mr. Darren Cole, the director of community programs at Brookhill, wanted to meet her. When she arrived at the school office, she found herself surrounded by polished floors, tall windows, and soft voices. Everything smelled like lemon and fresh paper. Mr. Cole smiled warmly. "Ms. Hensley, thank you for coming. We're thrilled to welcome your daughter to Brookhill." Clara sat down slowly. "I don't understand how this is possible." "It's a new partnership between our school and a private foundation," Mr. Cole explained. "We've started a pilot program for hardworking families. Your application was recommended directly by the donor." "Who is the donor?" "I'm afraid he prefers to remain private." Clara's mind raced. Something felt too good to be true. She smiled politely and thanked Mr. Cole. But as she left the school grounds, unease sat heavy in her chest. Back at home, Clara tried to reach out to her sister-in-law Jenna for advice. But Jenna had always been the cautious type. When Clara shared what had happened, Jenna didn't sound excited. Heard of strings attached? Jenna asked flatly. Rich people don't do things like this for free. It was a scholarship, Clara said. A scholarship you didn't apply for. Think about that. Clara hung up feeling more confused than before. That night after Nora had gone to bed, there was a knock at the door. Clara opened it to find a woman in a smart coat holding a folder. Ms. Hensley? I'm Mira Lawson from Child and Family Services. We received a report and need to conduct a routine check. Clara's stomach dropped. A report? From who? Mira didn't say. Just a few questions. It won't take long. Inside, she walked through the apartment, noting the clean kitchen, Nora's tidy room, and Clara's work schedule stuck to the fridge with a magnet. She spoke gently with Nora, asking about school, bedtime, and how often her mother was home. Clara watched from the hallway, her heart pounding. She had done everything right, worked hard, paid bills, loved her child. Why was this happening? After Mira left, Clara sat alone at the kitchen table. She couldn't sleep. The scholarship, the visit, the questions from Jenna. It felt like their life was being watched. In her room, Nora quietly pulled out her notebook. She had heard the knock. She had heard the word report. She didn't know who was behind it, but she had a guess. She wrote, one sentence on the page. If they're trying to take us apart, I have to find a way to keep us together. The next morning, a letter arrived in the mail. It had no return address. Inside was a single typed message. We are not watching you. We are helping you. But if you'd prefer, the help will stop now. Your choice. RV. Clara stared at the initials. Her hands shook. She looked across the room at the brown boot sitting near the door. And something clicked. The man under the bridge. The gift. The stranger was no stranger at all. The morning sky was clear and full of light as Nora stepped onto the stage at Brook Hill Academy's spring science fair. Her small hands trembled slightly, but her eyes shone with focus. In front of her stood a neatly built display of small wooden figures, pulleys, and strings. A hand-painted sign read, "The Kindness Chain, How One Good Deed Can Travel Far." Students, parents, and teachers wandered the gym, moving from project to project. Clara stood in the crowd, smiling nervously. She was proud of Nora, more than words could say. But her heart still held questions. About everything that had happened, and especially about the man who had started it all. That man, Rowan Vale, had not spoken to them directly since the strange letter. Clara hadn't answered it. She hadn't needed to. But today she hoped for something, clarity maybe, or closure. Nora took a deep breath and began to explain her project to a small group of students and visitors who had gathered. Kindness is like a chain, she said, her voice steady. If one person does something kind, it moves to the next person, and then the next. She pointed to her model. A small wooden hand passed a paper gift to another, which tipped a lever that set the next action in motion. One after another, the parts moved in a graceful line until the last hand dropped a paper heart into a tiny basket. The heart at the end, Nora explained, represents how kindness always returns. Sometimes not right away, but it does. The group clapped and more people came to see the display. From the back of the room, Rowan watched quietly. He was not wearing his usual expensive suit. Today he wore a simple navy sweater and khaki pants, blending in. He hadn't wanted to interrupt. He just wanted to see the result of a choice made under a bridge. Nora caught sight of him. Their eyes met across the crowd. She smiled. Later, after the fair, she walked up to him as he stood by the school garden. I hoped you'd come, she said. I wouldn't miss it, Rowan replied. Did you like it? I loved it, he said honestly. Especially the part about kindness coming back. Nora nodded. I wanted people to understand how a small thing, like giving away shoes, can turn into something really big. Rowan's throat tightened. You know who I am now, don't you? He asked softly. Yes, she said. You're the man from under the bridge. And the one who helped me get here. Rowan lowered himself onto a nearby bench. Nora joined. Him. I wasn't sure what would happen when I took those boots, he admitted. I've been given many things in my life. But that gift, it was different. I didn't give them to get anything back, Nora said. I know, he replied. That's what made it so powerful. A pause stretched between them, comfortable and quiet. Does it bother you that I didn't tell you who I was sooner? Rowan asked. Nora thought for a moment. No, but it did make things confusing. I'm sorry for that. It's okay, she said. It all worked out. I like it here. And my mom smiles more now. Rowan looked down at his hands. I've spent a lot of my life building things, businesses, ideas. But I forgot something important. What? That real success is when the thing you build helps someone else. Nora reached into her backpack and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She handed it to Rowan. He opened it slowly. It was a drawing. In the center was a pair of boots. Around them were circles, people helping each other, a teacher giving books, a child hugging a nurse, a stranger handing over warm socks. At the top, in Nora's handwriting, were the words, "This is what Dad would have wanted." Rowan blinked, quickly, emotion catching him off guard. "Thank you," he said. That weekend, something new appeared in Portland's downtown area, a small community center named the Boots Project. Funded quietly by Rowan Vale, it was a place where families in need could find food, clothes, job help, and most importantly, kindness. Inside the entrance, in a glass case, sat a pair of well-loved brown work boots. Beside them was a plaque that read, "One act of kindness can change everything." These boots walked the path first. Clara visited the center with Nora a few days later. As they walked through the rooms, seeing families laughing, volunteers offering help, and children playing safely, Clara squeezed Nora's hand. "Your dad would be proud," she whispered. Nora smiled. Later that day, the three of them, Clara, Nora, and Rowan, shared dinner together. Nothing fancy, just homemade soup, warm bread, and stories. For the first time in a long time, they all felt something simple and powerful, like they belonged.